Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind Your Mission. This month on the podcast, we're talking about prioritizing marriage. And today we are talking about a season that stretches marriage in a very different way, and that's deployment, or seasons where you and your husband are apart, whether that's work or something else that causes that. But when your husband deploys, or if you deploy, marriage doesn't pause, but it does change, and distance introduces things like loneliness, independence, fear, and the feeling that you might be carrying things alone. And while some may see deployment as something that you just get through, the reality is that it shapes you. It tests your trust, your communication, your commitment in quiet, unseen ways. And we want to discuss how we can shift our mindset and see deployments as something that can strengthen our marriages, not weaken them. Today, we're talking about what it looks like to love your husband faithfully while you're apart, not by pretending that it's easy, but by anchoring your marriage in God's truth. So, the weight of deployment on marriage, it's heavy. We just want to use that heaviness to make us stronger. Deployment creates forced independence, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. The emotional load increases while physical support decreases, especially if you have like a house or kids, and maybe you've been married a while, so you have your roles and responsibility like pretty divided. Then there are a lot of physical housekeeping items that are left to you, yard work, finances, like taking out the trash, like all those things. They can be a lot. And just the key truth here is that marriage is still very active during deployment, even when it's separated by miles.
Yeah, this is something that I'm very much in the thick of right now. And my husband's always been deployed a lot. I feel like since we've been married, we're probably together on average for like half the year. Other than last year, I feel like he was in training, so he was here a bit more. And before we had a kid, I would really miss him when he was gone, but I feel like I could handle everything on my own. We lived in Texas at the time, and we were living in an apartment, so like I didn't have like yard work. We didn't have kids. Like it was kind of just like how it had been before we got married, because we got married a year after graduation. And so I lived by myself the year before we got married. And so I feel like I just kind of reverted back into that era of my life. But now we don't live in Texas anymore. I have a different job. We have a house. And now, like, he left when my son was like 5 weeks, almost 6 weeks old, when our son was almost 6 weeks old. And it's been a lot to manage on my own. And his schedule is very unpredictable. So I kind of have to plan as if he's not going to be here for anything. Like originally he was going to be gone till August, and now I don't know. Like I never know when he's going to be here. So I literally just like don't plan for him to be in any plans for the whole year, basically. And I remember the night before he left, I think we found out like 2 days before he left, because we had a trip booked. We were going to go to DC for like a couple days and like we were using like the Amex credit. And we are going to stay in a super nice hotel and with our son. But we were just like, we can never go past the 2-hour radius because he's always on recall. So I was like, oh, let's go to DC because you're on paternity leave. You're not recallable. Well, I think the day before we were supposed to leave for that trip, he got the call that he was going to be leaving in like 2 days. And we were like, oh, thankfully we could cancel it. We had like 4 hours left to cancel it. Yeah, that's why I'm saying you can't make plans. You really can't make plans with the job he's in. And we originally planned this pregnancy out so that we would have like 4 months before he was deployed, because he was supposed to deploy in March. I was stressed about him leaving for when my son was 4 months. I didn't even, if you would have told me when I was pregnant that he'd be leaving when he was like 5 weeks old, I would have like freaked out. But the Lord sustains me. And I remember the night before Matt was supposed to leave, I think my son he's in a leap right now. I think he was in a leap then too. If you have a kid and about like the wonder weeks and the developmental leaps or whatever. So he was crying and I was trying to get him down to sleep. And he always has this like shriek cry when he's in his leaps and he's like overtired. It's like a very sad cry. And I remember I was crying because I was just postpartum and my husband was leaving. So I was crying. And I just had this image in my head. Like I was holding him, comforting him, trying to get him back to sleep. And then I just like felt God do the same with me and comforting me and just like reassuring me that he was going to be there with me in this thick of it, because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like I can't even take care of this kid with Matt here and not helping me. Like, how am I going to do it without him? But in that moment, I was reminded that it's not I, but through Christ in me. And I don't remember what the song's called, but it's by City of Light. And I feel like I've just been listening to that on repeat, but it has those lyrics in it. It's essentially that premise. And it just reminds me that deployments are hard, but through it, I'm reminded of what it says in the book of James to consider it pure joy when we face trials of many kinds, because the testing of our faith produces steadfastness. And I've been working on memorizing James as if you listen to our New Year episode. So that has been fun to memorize that as I walk through
Mhm.
this. Hold on. In his past moments, I have always just kind of ignored the fact that he was gone and just went back to my previous life and lived my life with my friends and everything. But this one, it's different because everything has changed. So there's no old life for me to go back to when he has left. Like, I'm not with my friends in Texas, living in my apartment in Texas and
Mhm.
the life that I had before we were married. I can't do that here. And so I kind of this deployment, I've shifted my mindset to see this season as an opportunity to depend fully on the Lord, because when I did that, I've begun to actually enjoy watching how I can grow and lean into it and prepare myself to be a better wife when he comes back and finding myself in motherhood. I feel like it's easy to wish the hard seasons away, which is kind of what I've done in the past, kind of
Mhm.
ignored it and just try to get past it. But I really want to take advantage of this time to use it to be in deep dependence of the Lord and to trust Him and see the ways that He works even in the middle of the hard, because I feel like the times when I'm closest with the Lord, when I'm going through hard times. So I just really need to lean into that and use I don't really have extra time, but use the
Mhm.
time that I'm not with my husband to really sit with the Lord and just depend on his strength, because I truly don't know how I'm getting through this season other than him. And I'm
Mhm.
going on a flight tomorrow and I'm like, well, the only way I'm going to get through this flight with my son and traveling for the first time with the baby is so overwhelming.
Just on that note, it is funny how the more kids you have, the more your capacity grows because I also have a trip coming up
Mhm.
with just the baby, and I'm actually really looking forward to the ease of just one baby. Like, it's just
Yeah.
funny, and it's not nothing that I like, it's just the Lord grows your capacity and
Mhm.
you grow in your skills over time, but I back to your point on focusing on relying on the Lord. I think that's so good, and that's how we should view time away, like, viewing it that way makes our marriages stronger. I think unfortunately for me, instead of learning how to rely on the Lord during seasons of distance, I learned how to rely on myself in, like, a not so healthy way. And I think that because our first 2 years of marriage, Noel and I only spent a couple of months together, I got really good at taking care of myself, both physically and emotionally. You know, I built routines, I filled my calendar. I went home when I was on leave. I planned fun things with my friends. Like, I stayed really busy, and none of those things were wrong. But instead of pouring out my heart to the Lord in loneliness, I kind of just distracted myself from it. And somewhere along the way, I started emotionally disconnecting from Nolan as sort of a coping mechanism. Like, when I didn't let myself feel how much I missed him, it wasn't hard. And this is me being a little bit vulnerable here, but I also leaned way too hard, I think, into the good parts of being alone. Like, there was endless time to scroll without feeling guilty. Like, I could binge watch whatever I wanted to. I could eat whatever I wanted to, spend money however I wanted to. Like, none of that was being watched. Like, no one was there to see it and challenge it. And over time, I think the independence kind of became a shield for my emotions, but shields don't just protect, they also have blocked intimacy between my husband and I. So when Nolan came home, I didn't automatically shift back into emotional closeness with him. I had like trained myself to operate solo. And now, like 2 kids later, like things have moved really fast. I'm still learning how to undo some of that. Like, I'm still figuring out how to stay emotionally connected instead of defaulting to independence. Like, I'm really good at operating alone. Like,
Mhm.
that's great, but that's like not how it's necessarily meant to be. And I'm still learning how to let him into my internal world instead of just proving that I can handle everything. And maybe I'm the only one who's done this. Like, that could very well be the case. Or maybe this is something that more military wives like just don't say out loud. Like, even now, I feel like I become overly self reliant and I feel emotionally distant from him, but I, like, mask that as strength, like, I call that strength, and in Psalm 62:8, it says, "Trust in the Lord at all times, pour out your heart before him, God is a refuge for us," and I think what I missed early on is that, like, God invites that honesty, especially in lonely seasons. He wasn't asking for me to distract myself, he was asking me to pour out my heart to him. Because surviving distance is one thing, but cultivating intimacy with both the Lord and your husband requires vulnerability, and vulnerability doesn't grow behind the shield that I created by just trying to handle everything on my own.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I feel like that's so good and you just really put really deep words back behind the feelings I think a lot of people do feel when their spouse is deployed because I feel like that is how I've probably felt in the past because I could just do everything on my own, but
Yeah.
this season, I can't. Motherhood's hard, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I literally can't do it on my own. So I feel like that is why I've had to rely on the Lord, like, I'm like, I can't even, like, think to when he's coming back and, like, how much weight will be lifted off of my shoulders on things that I don't necessarily have to worry about, but I can also see how it can be easy to become overly self-reliant in this season because right now I'm still figuring out how my son works and what routines click and how to put him down to sleep, and I feel like it could feel tricky when your spouse does come back and you're trying to reintegrate them into your day and the baby's schedule and your schedule, especially when so much has changed when they've been away. Like James has grown and developed so much. It's like crazy. And we've kind of created this little world together while my husband's been gone.
Mhm.
And I think it's hard too because he doesn't get that interaction with his son, like building that relationship with his son. So it'll probably be a little bit weird when he comes back and then there's like this baby that he's been away more than he's been around him. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I feel like this has been a sweet season that I've gotten to really bond with my son and have, like, time to really connect with him, and I think that's something that I'll always cherish, even though he's, like, afraid of anyone that's not me right now because I'm the
Mhm.
only person he sees most of the time. But I think as I reflect on my husband returning, I am learning that it's important to hold the routines with an open hand and remind myself to let him care for James and figure James out himself too, and spend time with him and be a part of his schedule without trying to control every detail and just create space for him to love our son in his own way and trusting that all the family can adjust together and all of that. So I'm excited for us to all be together again, but I could see how it would have different challenges that necessarily weren't here in the past because it was just me.
Yeah.
So, but thankfully we've been able to talk a decent amount while he's been gone, so that's been good to at least like I know some people don't get that opportunity
Mhm.
to be able to talk with their spouse so much on deployment. So I've been thankful for that at least to be able to send him pictures and updates and we can call sometimes too.
Yeah. I remember when Nolan got back from his last patrol, like, after Weston had been born. Weston, I think, was about 5 months old at the time, so I do have a video when Nolan first saw
Mhm.
Weston, like, when he got back, which I definitely recommend 'cause,
Mhm.
Nolan was like, "Who is this baby?" Like, he was so big. He, had full head control, like, he wasn't sleeping in a spot, like, all these different things had changed, and he's like, "Who is this child?" Like, it definitely took a while to readjust, and I think I mean, different seasons of marriage have been hard for different reasons, but I think that I would probably say that was the hardest season for us. Like,
Mhm.
we were also moving at the time too, so everything felt very chaotic. And if I'm honest, like, at the root of it, I was just really angry. I felt like he wasn't leading our family, but how on earth was he supposed to when I had been operating, like, emotionally as if he didn't
Mhm.
exist? Like, I'd gotten so used to functioning on my own and making decisions, managing my emotions, like, taking care of our son, like, that when he stepped back into that, there wasn't space for him to lead, but I wanted him to lead, but
Mhm.
I didn't leave room for him to. And that's something, like I mentioned earlier, that I'm still learning, like, how to soften and reconnect with him and how to let independence stop being a shield that blocks that intimacy between us. And that kind of begs the question, so if independence can quietly create distance, then what does it look like to intentionally choose love while we're apart? Because distance doesn't have to mean drift. We don't have to put up that shield, but staying connected isn't automatic. It's something that we have to actively guard and build. We have to choose to love intentionally while we're apart. And a few parts of this are staying emotionally connected, not just logistically connected. We need to be having conversations beyond just schedules and tasks. Like, when they're gone, conversations can easily default to, like, "What time are you getting in? Did you pay that bill?" Like, "Here's the schedule for the week." Like, it could all be logistics. Like, they're necessary, yes, but are they sufficient for intimacy? Not so much. So we need to be going beyond just the logistics in our conversations. We need to ask things like, "What's been heavy for you this week? What are you excited about? What's something that stressed you out today? Like, what's the Lord teaching you?" Like, sharing fears, hopes, and prayer requests and letting your husband know how he's still needed and valued. In Proverbs 16:24, it says, "Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body." So just continuing to encourage each other, and our words can either reinforce that distance or they can nourish connection in the time away. Like a simple, "I'm proud of you," or "I need your wisdom on this," goes a long way.
Second way we can choose to love intentionally while being apart is internal. It's thinking about what we're allowing to shape our hearts while they're gone. And this connects directly to what you talked about earlier about scrolling and binging and having your own autonomy. And I think one way that we can combat this is avoiding emotional replacement. So, avoiding venting to someone else instead of your husband, avoiding finding emotional validation elsewhere like social media, and then avoiding comparing your marriage to someone else's highlight reel, especially, like, on social media. Like, it's kind of hard to be on social media in this season because you see all
Mhm.
the perfect couples and you're like, "Wow, I'm doing everything alone." So
Yeah.
I feel like staying off social media can be super helpful too, and then also protecting what you consume if you are on social media. So don't follow people that might fuel resentment in you, and don't have conversations that normalize disrespect towards your husband. Or yeah, I try one thing I try not to do is, like, complain too much about
Mhm.
him being gone, especially to other people, because I'm so grateful for what he does to protect our country and, like, serve our family and, building a career that will support us. So, for that, I'm forever grateful, and there are hard things in this season, but I wouldn't change it for the world at all. So I try not to complain about it because that can be, like, a toxic mindset I feel like you can fall into. And then, yeah, not comparing on social media is like I talked about. It goes back to Proverbs 4:23 when it talks about keeping your heart with all vigilant, for from it flows the springs of life. So I think it's so important to protect your heart in this season, protect what you're consuming, protect how you're speaking to other people. Because if you're in an area like me, I'm in Norfolk, so
Mhm.
everyone spouses are deployed, and so you can either lift each other up in this season or kind of complain and get into a mindset of bitterness. So I think it's so important to be a good example to all the other spouses around you and all the other military families around you. Because what we feed our hearts in lonely seasons will eventually shape how we see our husbands. And when he comes back, I want to be the best version of myself that I can be. And so I think that's why it's important to protect your mind and your heart, because we don't wanna have to go through all this rebuilding when they do come back, 'cause it is hard when they come back. So a way you can make it easier is just by working on yourself and your own relationship with God, because and protecting your heart, because everything else flows from it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll throw this practical piece in here. There are a lot of tangible ways that we can guard our marriage, both when they're gone and when they're home. And I know sometimes people feel kind of awkward talking about this, but I think that wisdom here means acknowledging this reality. If you look at many marriages that have experienced infidelity, so any sort of cheating, they're often like small compromises along the way, situations where clarity was lowered, boundaries were softened, and often alcohol was involved, and so just, like, one tangible thing, for those of you who like tangible things, like, Nolan and I decided early on in our marriage to be really conservative in the area of drinking, like, we don't drink unless we're together. We don't drink much anyway in general, but we just decided in general, like, we're only gonna drink alcohol if we're together, and that's not because we don't trust each other, that's not because we're afraid, but it's because we value our marriage more than we value the freedom of saying yes to everything. That one decision removes like a big variable for us. And I just want to say this clearly, like putting physical barriers in front of sin doesn't automatically mean weakness or lack of self control. Sometimes it's just wisdom. Things like covenant eyes for your computer or other like accountability software, or giving your husband or a close friend a password so you can only get on social media for certain hours, like things like that, both for big sin things and then just unhealthy things that could potentially lead to sin. Like for me, my husband has a password that if I spend more than 45 minutes on Instagram a day, like in order to have more time, like I need to ask him for the password and it has to be justified. So just boundaries like that. It's not necessarily sin that I'm scrolling Instagram, but it's not something that's leading me closer to the Lord all the time. So just having boundaries on those things that are physical aren't signs that your marriage is fragile. They're just signs that your marriage is valuable. Guardrails don't mean that you're sliding off the road. They just mean that you care about staying on it. And then the anchor that holds all this together and the thing that keeps that from becoming just behavior management is prayer. So, praying for your husband daily, not just for his safety when he's gone, but for his leadership, his integrity, his emotional strength, his walk with the Lord, and then praying with him whenever possible. So, if you can talk to him, like even short prayers over FaceTime, even sometimes awkward ones or imperfect ones, like praying with your husband is such a strength. And then like Liz was talking about, just trusting God with what you can't control. Like You can't control patrol schedules all the time. You can't control the danger that your husband's going to face. You can't control all the outcomes in life, but you can entrust him and your marriage to the Lord.
I like that you really touched on having, like, those guardrails put in place to kind of protect your marriage. I feel like those are
Mhm.
good things just in general to have. Like, we've never actually talked about it, but since you're saying it, like, we don't really do that either. So I think
Mhm.
you'll figure it out within your marriage and, like, what guardrails you and your husband want to put up to kind of protect your hearts during that time. But I like that you touched on that. And one thing that I'm learning in this season, since I am able to talk to my husband more, because they have service, is to be fully present when I do get a chance to talk to him, which is hard
Yeah.
if James is awake. It doesn't really work, but then I can show him James. So it's hard because also sometimes James is down for a nap, and that one moment that I get without distraction is the only time that I can work out or
Mhm.
clean or just sit down and
Yeah.
sit down and watch a show for
Yeah.
once, which doesn't really ever happen. But I'm realizing that it's okay and necessary to sit down and really talk with your husband and without pairing it with something else, because I
Yeah.
can be guilty of, like, talking while I clean because I'm like, "Oh, I gotta get this done." I think it's important to remember how hard of a position it can be for your husband, especially thinking about Matt being away from us. I think it's hard for him to not see James grow up and to be kind of out of the loop a little bit and to
Mhm.
not be included in as much stuff like our everyday lives. And things are different now than they used to be. And I think it's important to check in on your spouse as well, even just to see how they're doing, because I think that matters a lot to them and makes them feel included and make sure that they're doing okay mentally too, because deployment can be hard. So I think that's an important thing. Like, yes, it's hard for me being home, but like I can't even imagine being in his shoes. And obviously we're different. Like,
Mhm.
but that's got to be so hard being away from your family after such a big change. And I've also noticed, we kind of talked about this earlier, how easy it can be to fall into the comparisons trap,
Mhm.
especially with postpartum. Like, I can see another person's postpartum experience and maybe they're at the same place I am postpartum, but and they have like a lot of support and they have family nearby and they have a partner who can step in and help and they get time to go
Yeah.
grocery shopping or like get their nails done or work out in
Yeah.
peace, because I my workouts, uh, they barely last because I'm always getting interrupted, but that's I'm thankful for the interruptions. But it's
Mhm.
tempting to compare my experience to theirs, and I might not get a long workout or a quiet moment to myself, and I might be doing my quiet time with James, but that's okay. Every season has its rhythm, and in this one, I get to give my son like my undivided attention, and I know I'm gonna have time for that stuff when he is back
Mhm.
and as James gets older. So I'm just trying to see the beauty in it. And I also, this season is a huge exercise in trust for me because, like we talked about earlier, I have to hold every plan in God's hands because I don't know when he'll be home or when he's leaving next or any of that stuff. But there are ways to stay connected even when he's apart. So I think it's important while they are away as much as you can, because I don't know how much communication you have with your husband on deployment, but I think it's important to include them in parenting decisions, like working through those together, and bigger purchases if you're gonna buy something big, talk with them through it, and just also, like, telling them about your day and talking about what you're learning, like we talked about earlier, I think is a way to maintain that intimacy and closeness even if you're not physically together. And I feel like sometimes we have better conversations when he is gone because
Mhm.
it's, like, whenever we call, it's, like, designated time to
Yeah.
talk, whereas if you're home, you're just kinda passing and doing tasks. So, that's, like, one perk, I guess. It helps with your communication. Oh, and you can make it fun too, like reading the same book of the Bible together and talking about that and memorizing scripture together. We're both trying to memorize James, so that's something we
Yeah.
can kind of talk about. And also, this is something we used to do, I feel like, more early marriage or when we were dating, is, like, writing each other notes. I feel like that
Mm.
can really allow you guys to feel connected even when they're apart. So we would always write each other. We haven't done it because life's crazy, but we used to write each other a note like the day that he would leave for a deployment. And I remember one time when we were dating at the academy, he probably went away for a couple months, and he had written like every day to me in a book, and I thought that was like really special. We don't do it anymore. But
Mhm.
if words of affirmation is something that's really important to you, it's really important to him. I necessarily don't really care for words of affirmation, but he really likes words of affirmation. So I feel like understanding your partner's love language and building on that can also help him feel loved during this time. So for him, it's like quality time. So I'll try to be really intentional when we're calling. I didn't write him
Mhm.
a note, newborn phase, but I feel like that's something that he really values. But even speaking words of encouragement,
Mhm.
if they're a words of affirmation person. But I think those small gestures can go a long way and allow you guys to kind of feel connected when you are apart.
Yeah, I like the practicality there and some other practical things that can kinda anchor marriage during deployment. I think of just having rhythms of communication. Obviously, it's not gonna look the exact same every day, but just agreeing on some realistic expectations. Like, I remember when either Nolan or I, depending on who was gone, when one of us would pull and depart, like, we made it a priority to, like, spend time on the phone before we went out and, like, got food or did anything, like, fun. Like, we wanted to prioritize the connection first. Because a few times when I didn't do that, like, when I don't know, either he was busy or there was something fun that I wanted to make sure I got to, then the conversation ended up happening late at night, and by that point, like you mentioned earlier, the distraction of being tired and wanting to just go to bed and not, like, being fully present or, like, and I'll just admit this, if anyone else does this, then you don't have to out yourself, but it might make me feel less alone in this, but sometimes when I'm on the phone, like, I'll scroll Instagram while I'm talking to somebody, and, like, how disrespectful, like, I wouldn't do that if
Mhm.
I was, like, face to face with them,
Matt can
but
tell when I do that, so he'll call
I'm
me.
I'm glad to know that I'm not alone in doing that,
No. Yeah,
so
definitely. Or
just things
answer
like
text
that.
messages. I've done that. Like, someone will text me while I'm on the call, and I'll be like, "Oh, answer it."
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's just so easy to do, so just having kind of some agreed on expectations for you, how your conversations will look and when they'll happen. And then, of course, allowing for flexibility when communication is limited and then extending grace when there's silence and you aren't able to talk because of logistics of what's going on in the deployment or whatever. And then another thing that's practical that can help is just having a shared mission mindset, remembering your why during this season. Like, why are you enduring this? Like, focusing on that is really important and doing deployment as something that you walk through together versus like both getting through on your own. Like having coping mechanisms is fine, but like do that together. Like figure out what that looks like together. And then you totally touched on this earlier, but just I'll repeat it is speaking honor publicly and privately about your husband, like how you speak about him shapes how you feel about him. And choosing honor even when you feel frustrated or overwhelmed is super important. And also, I think it's important to be intentional about surrounding yourself with people who are going to strengthen your marriage, not just sympathize with your frustration. Like people are
Mhm.
going to call you higher and help you and guard your unity when the distance makes it hard. Like I was really thankful that we were in the Norfolk area during that time because I had other military Christian couples who are older than me who were able to speak a lot of life and encouragement into me and like help make sure that I'm speaking honorably about my husband and make sure that I'm not just I don't know, forgetting about him and not checking in on him. Like they were able to help with that. And so not just surrounding yourself with people who are gonna like make you feel good and validate you. Like we don't always need validation. Sometimes we need like a little bit of positive encouragement, but that sometimes is hard to hear. So I think that's really important. And then I thought of Romans 12:10 too, which just says outdo one another in showing honor. So just like I don't know, making it a silent competition to outlove and out honor one another, I think is never a bad thing.
Yeah, going off of that too, I feel like not only not complaining to other people, but also not complaining to your spouse while they're gone
Yeah.
because it's already hard for them to be away and you're
Mhm.
kind of making them feel if you complain, you're making them feel bad about
Yeah.
being away, and that's something they can't control. And so kind of shifting your mindset and being grateful for the work that they are doing and not complaining to them because I feel like it just makes it harder for them to be away and then they feel guilty and bad. So that's something I try not to do.
Mhm.
But I also do think, as hard as deployments are, I think they have made our marriage so much stronger because we really value every minute that we get to spend together.
Mhm.
And we try not to take it for granted. Like, I feel like when he is here, we just want to hang out with each other. I don't want to hang out
Yeah.
with anyone else. And I feel like we try to make an effort to spend time with each other. And we'll see how this looks like in this next season. But I think it's helped us build like a really sweet friendship, like not only
Mhm.
marriage, but I feel like we have a sweet friendship because of it. And I feel like we just really genuinely enjoy being together because we know that we don't always get this time together. And I know it's going to change having a kid, but I still hope that we are still really good friends when he comes
Mhm.
back, even though we are kind of tag teaming an infant. But
Mhm.
I'm hoping that we still have that sweet friendship that we've kind of always had. And I feel like deployments have always made us have that because
Yeah.
we we genuinely don't know. Like, he could be called out in 2 hours, so it's like,
Yeah.
we gotta make the most of it.
Yeah. I think what you're describing is just the both and of this
Mhm.
life, like the
Mm.
military life. Like deployments can build something really beautiful in your marriage. And at the same time, there are real losses that are attached to it. Like you can cherish your husband deeply and have that real friendship and still also grieve the parts of normal life that you don't get.
Yeah, I feel like military life and the pace of it can be really frustrating, and I feel like it's been easier mentally since I also chose this life for myself, which
Yeah.
you did too. Like, I went to the academy knowing well, I didn't really know a whole lot, but I know like, I mean, I went to the academy and made that decision for myself, so it's not like I necessarily married into it, which could be even more frustrating because maybe it's something you didn't foresee for your life,
Hmm.
and it's something you're kind of been thrust in because you fell in love with a guy in the military.
Yeah.
But for us, we kind of chose it on ourselves, which I it kind of like, I can't be upset with him for it because I chose this as well,
Yeah.
and but it is hard. Military life is so hard because it's not just that my husband is gone, it's also I can't live near family because we're in the
Hmm.
military, and since you're in the military, you also don't have a super strong community necessarily because you're moving every few years. Like, we do have community here, but it's you're moving and then you get uprooted and then you have to find new community again. And so it's just not as strong as I would like it to be. But I am thankful for the community that we have here and the friendships that I do have here. I feel like one of the biggest things that I've learned since being in the military and having a spouse who's deployed a lot is that you can't let the challenges overtake you. Like, there's beauty in this life if you look for it. Living in places that I never would have experienced otherwise. Like, I joined the military to get out of Indiana and I'm done that. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that is, like, a beautiful part of military life. Like, I love living different places and just getting to learn about the different parts of the country, and, like, I really do enjoy moving. I feel like that's kinda fun. I'm sure maybe as our family grows, maybe I'll kinda be over it, but I enjoy moving.
Hmm. Hmm.
Since I lived in Indiana, I can make anywhere in the
Yeah.
US, like, seem like a fun place to live. I feel like, there's beauty in every place because I've lived in one of the most boring places. But I love the people there. Like, I would move back to Indiana in a heartbeat, but it's just funny. But anyways, and I also have to remember that my husband really does love his job, so I think it's more to have a positive mindset about it and just kind of enjoy the military life and support him in that because he does enjoy it, and I would like to make career out of it so we get retirement and all that.
Hmm.
So, it's just my life for the next however 16 years at least, I guess. But, yeah, it's also taught us too to be really close-knit as a family
Hmm.
because sometimes all we have is each other, and I'm excited for that for our kids one day too.
Yeah.
I think it'll make our family really close and our kids really close because they're really gonna have to rely on their friendships and their relationships with each other, which I feel like
Hmm.
is a really sweet aspect of military life. Because I grew up and we were all in different sports and never really saw
Hmm.
each other, and we're not super close now because of that. So I'm excited to kinda give my kids maybe the opportunity to have really close relationships with each other. I feel like something that I've also learned in this season that is really important is to not fall into a victim mindset because when I do, I feel like I get stuck in negativity and it really affects my emotional and mental well-being. So I think it's so important to choose to focus on the positives and acknowledge the hard and
Hmm.
be grateful for it because it's making us more like Christ. But I feel like that makes a big difference in how I see this life. Like, I get kind of uncomfortable when people are like, "Oh, that must be so hard. Like, are you
Yeah.
okay?" And it's like, I appreciate the gesture, but, like,
Hmm.
I don't want to, like, think about that. I don't
Oh,
wanna think
that
about how hard it
yeah.
is
I relate to
because
that so much.
yeah, like, I get really uncomfortable when people do that, and I'm sure some people like that, so I feel like maybe I am like that with other people, checking in and making sure they're okay, but I personally do not because I feel like it just gets me in a bad place where I'm, like,
Yeah.
pity partying on myself. Like, I don't wanna think about how hard it is. I just need to get through it.
That is like a whole like topic in and of itself. Like I could take that idea and like apply it to numerous different situations, but yes, I want to choose to see the good and I want to choose to see how God is going to use it even if it is bad or hard. So, yeah, relate to that 100%. Okay. And then I did just want to touch on to kind of wrap us up the reintegration and realignment when we are back together because this like I kind of mentioned for our marriage can sometimes be harder than the time apart and the reality is that the expectation of them getting back often doesn't match our reality and the reality is also that you've both changed in different ways and that a lot of patience is gonna be required as you're reintegrating, and I think encouragement is important in this phase, just relearning each other takes time, like, knowing that, and grace is essential on both sides here, so just I wanted to bring in the reintegration phase because it can be tough sometimes.
I like that you touched on that too because I feel like we haven't like this whole past year he's been in training, like he just recently has been deployed probably in like the past 6 months. So I'm kind of remembering how hard it is when they do come back, because I think I kind of remember that in Texas, that it would be kind of hard when he
Mhm,
would come back, but I don't really remember because it's a while ago. When he's been gone before, I feel like I haven't changed that much. When he was on the boat in Texas, he would be like a month in, a month out, so it was very frequent but shorter, so there wasn't much change I feel like that could happen
mhm,
in a month, so it was, like, a little bit easier to adjust then, I think, because we'd never been apart for that long, and even since we've been here, we haven't been apart that long, maybe, like, 6 weeks is the longest. We haven't been apart that long, basically. It's just more frequent, but this time I feel like it feels different because I've gone through one of the biggest identity shifts in my life and
mhm,
life changes possible by having like our first child. Like my identity's completely shifted and he's gone through big changes too. But I'm excited for the reintegration and getting him to kind of get a closer relationship with him. And when he does come back, I think it's important to acknowledge that we both changed in a lot of ways and to give each other grace. And we're not stepping back into the people we were before because we're
mhm.
completely different. And I think we're meeting each other in this new season. And I think that requires patience and understanding and a lot of love because we're different people when we come back. But I am really excited for him. And I really want to foster like an environment where he feels like he can really bond with our son. So
Mhm.
I don't know how to do that in the best way, but I just guess giving them time to spend together.
Yeah, because it's already different, like, when a baby's born, like, they already don't the mom and the dad feel differently
Mhm.
regardless of the deployment factor, like,
Yeah.
you've been growing this child for 9 months, so, like, yeah, I can see I know because I kinda went through it. Nolan was only gone for a couple months, but, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, you're different, the baby's completely different, like, you have
Mhm.
your own rhythms, and the best thing about life is that, we're not in control of any of it, and,
Mhm.
the one thing that is guaranteed is that, change is gonna happen, especially in the military, like, there's always gonna be something that you don't expect, and so even though, like, right now, there's a lot of ways you can prepare for when Matt comes back, like, both personally and just in your expectations and everything, like, I think the biggest thing in all of this, and just to kinda wrap us up, like, surrender is crucial in everything, whether you're talking about your husband being on a deployment, reintegration, or just, like, anything in life, like, we have to surrender it to the Lord and just seek Him in the
Mhm.
midst of the change and the unknown. So, hopefully, this episode resonated with some of you. I know it's more like a niche topic, kind of military centric, or even if your husband travels a lot, this could be applicable to you, or if you travel a lot for work, or whatever the situation may be. I hope that it encouraged you and that you're able to take some bits and nuggets from it. We just want you to remember that distance does not diminish the covenant that is your marriage, and God is near to you, even in the quiet moments when you carry more than feels fair. And just know that you're not walking this season alone. The Lord goes before you, He stands beside you, and He holds your marriage in His hands. And just remember Matthew 19:6. It says, "So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate." So that kind of wraps up today's episode, but thank you so much for listening. We are going to have a guest episode next week, so we'll see you back here next Monday for that. And with that, this has been Erin and Liz helping you mind your mission.